Hi, everybody. As you
Hello.
are coming in, I would love it if you would put in the chat where you're joining us from today. That would be wonderful.
Oh, we got a big room today.
Yeah, you're so popular, Karishma.
Oh my God. Oh. I think this is a really, really popular topic. I think this is from
Sure
my
is.
experience. I think this is something that a lot of people struggle with, and I myself have gone through this, which we'll be talking about today.
Yep, absolutely.
Hi,
All right,
everyone.
folks. So as everyone is checking in, for those that I haven't met before, I'm Miranda Hitchcock. I'm one of the founders of Every Dog Behavior and Training. We are a 501c3 nonprofit in Austin, Texas, and our whole goal is to make sure that everyone has access to the dog training and behavior support that they need. So we run free webinars, usually once or twice a month. Donations are optional. Thank you so much to everybody who donated to be here today. It makes it possible for us to pay some of our speakers. So that's really exciting for us. We also provide financial assistance on everything that we do, all the training we do here. If you'd like to support the nonprofit, we do accept donations and we have some cool t-shirts and other swag on our website. So please consider that if you like what you see here today and you like what we're doing. Quick things for today. If you have questions, please put those into the chat box. That way I will make sure that they get to Karishma at the end to answer so that we can hear them on the recording. Please do keep yourselves muted. I will be muted and off screen, usually because my dog likes to bark at this time of day, which is super fun. We are recording, so if your internet drops out, if you have to leave, don't worry, this will get posted to YouTube hopefully tomorrow, and I will send out the link to everyone who is registered. So this will be available there. Closed captions are enabled through Zoom. If you're having trouble finding those, please let me know. If you have any tech issues during the presentation, again, feel free to shoot me a message or drop something in the chat and I'll be monitoring from there. And then we'll take all questions at the end. I am terrible at introducing people. I always feel like it's awkward to have someone else talk about you while you're there. So I'm going to pass it over to Karishma to introduce and then kick us off.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Miranda. I hate intros too. I think they're so weird. And so I think we're just going to dive straight in, and I think introductions will come naturally. So I'm super excited to be here to talk about stranger danger, which is one of my personal favorite topics. My name is Karishma. If you haven't met me before, we'll talk a little bit more about my vibe in a minute, but let's just check in with you guys first. So I have my own personal experience raising a dog who has stranger danger. And I think it can be helpful sometimes to just do a little vibe check of the room and be like, are we in the right place? Because today we're going to be talking about dogs who are either fearful or bark and lunge at new people. So if you're experiencing those behaviors from your dog, you're definitely in the right place. If you've been struggling to introduce your dog to new people successfully, maybe you've had no success and it's all been terrible, or some success and some not, and you're unsure about what to do next, or you're really wanting to be able to have guests over and just wondering when that's going to be an option for you. I think that's a big one for lots of people. And if you're anything like me, when I was kind of really at the cusp of it with my own dog, I was in a loop with him and with myself, feeling very frustrated by his behavior and my own behaviors as well, to be perfectly honest, because it can be a very emotional kind of situation. So if any of that resonates, I just want to say I'm really happy that you're here. I have a really personal connection to this topic. It's one of my favorite topics to talk about. And that is mostly because of my personal experience with my dog, Hira. Now, I'll be talking about Hira a little bit in this webinar, but first of all, if you've never met me before, just a bit of information. My name is Karishma, like I said. My pronouns are they, them. I have an academic background in ethics and animal liberation, and I have multiple dog training certifications. Bit of a nerd, so just kind of constantly trying to learn new things and figure out the best ways to do things. That kind of also feeds into my um, autistic and ADHD superpowers. I've been working with animals now and dogs for 8 years in New York City and in London, and have been raising my own dogs at the same time. I now work as head of training at CCA, that stands for Calm Canine Academy. And we're a group of dog trainers from around the world, dog trainers, behavior consultants, and actually a veterinarian now. We're lucky enough to have in our team, who provide dog-centered care for common behavior challenges. So stranger danger, stranger aggression, stranger reactivity, stranger fear, whatever label we want to use to describe this. This is one of our specialties, alongside other fear and nervous system dysregulation challenges like separation anxiety, urban anxiety, other forms of reactivity, sound sensitivity, etc., etc. That's where we have our sweet spot. That's 100% of our clientele. And our job is to help you, the dedicated dog guardians, facilitate healing for your dogs. And hopefully, in the process, along the way, we will dismantle some oppressive systems through this interspecies dynamic. And I really do believe that through the process, especially of stranger danger work, we can see like a really transformative healing experience for all animals involved. That was definitely my experience. And I want to talk a little bit more about my experience, and I think I'll introduce I think this picture of him is so funny. He looks like he's a little like soldier. He's standing on a rock, which is why his legs are all weird like that. But this is my now 7-year-old poodle, Hera. And he was my first instance of real stranger danger.
Hey, Karishma, it looks like the slide is still on the stranger danger dog bullet points.
It is. Thank you, my love, for letting me know. Sometimes Canva does this, so I'm going to do a little quick refresh. We did test this before, but it does like to play with us just to keep us on our toes a little bit. Let me try again. Thank you for bearing with me, my loves. As you know, it's not a webinar without a tech problem, is it? Come on. How about now? Do we see stranger danger dog on the screen with some cute emojis?
Yes.
Do you see me looking really adorable?
Yeah, there you are.
Yay! All right, perfect. And now we can go to Hera, the most important slide that we definitely can't miss. And this is my dog. This is my boy Hera. As you can see, looking a little bit funny, standing on a log or a rock in the park. And he was my first experience of stranger danger, stranger fear, and ultimately he exhibited stranger aggression, which involved ultimately biting as well as barking and lunging. And let's talk a little bit more about the presentations. You can see what is stranger danger on the screen, my loves. Yeah. Or is it stuck again?
It's stuck again.
Tell me no. Are you? I'll try again. How about now? No? We're not seeing it? Okay, I'm going to try something else, which is a quick reboot of Canva. I really apologize for this, my loves, but I guess the folks who are joining now can enjoy. All right, we're going to do a quick tech check and then we'll launch back into the presentation. So bear with me, my loves. Okay, we're going to practice changing slides, everyone. You ready?
We can do it.
We're ready? All right, we're going to go back. You should see now Stranger Danger 101. Can you see that?
Yes.
Oh, okay, wait. We're going to do another check, though, because it likes to mess with us. We got to be really on our toes here. I'm going to move 2 slides to the right. Why is my dog like this? Can you see that? Oh, yes, amazing. Okay, we're going to try this again, my loves. We're going to try this again, and hopefully this is going to work. And I'm going to do a little like marker to you all when I change to the next slide, so you know what you should be expecting. And that way, if it sticks, you can all immediately start waving your hands around and going, it didn't move. And that way you don't have to interrupt me again. Hopefully this will be a little smoother. Thank you so much for bearing with us. Thank you, Miranda, so much help to know. Otherwise I would have just gone on for the next hour and you would have just been stuck staring at the title screen. All right, so what is stranger danger? What are we dealing with here? We're usually dealing with a fear response. No, danger indicates fear. It's kind of obvious. But I think the most important thing to note is that we're dealing with a really real experience from these dogs' perspectives, even if they're just making a lot of noise. You know, we've all heard of the angry little Chihuahua who's just snapping away. That little Chihuahua is actually experiencing actual real fear. And often when we're seeing behaviors like running away, hiding, growling, barking, snapping, lunging, we're actually seeing dogs in that fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode where they are pretty much not in control of their behavior. The functions of their behavior usually is safety seeking or information seeking. And sometimes there's some social seeking mixed in as well, because, you know, they're complicated creatures and they can be conflicted. But in general, our dogs are learning that the best way to keep them safe is to perform the behaviors that they're performing. So if you're watching right now, I want you to think, what are the behaviors that we're dealing with from your dog right now? So for Hira, it started off as a puppy, he was just aloof. I got him at 4.5 months old, and he was just avoidant and an old soul, and, you know, very serious were some of the words that we used to use to describe him. And around adolescence, we saw that escalating, and it started moving into a little bit more cowering sometimes, or sometimes staring a little bit tough at people. And around social maturity, between the ages of 1 and 3, this escalated and got worse and worse and worse. It became barking and lunging at everyone on the street. It became growling, snapping, and biting at people who reached for him. And for him, it was all people, but especially men. Meh. I mean, come on, fair. Sorry. But especially men, and especially folks who exhibited what he deemed to be like out of control behavior, or behavior that was unpredictable. So people who would dance, gesticulate a lot, who were very confident and loud. I have a beautiful, exuberant brother who has the most amazing ADHD that makes him so flamboyant and wonderful. But Hira absolutely hated him. He was like, what is this chaos creature? Hell no, absolutely not. So I want you to think about the details. It's really important. And as well as the details of the stranger danger, which is the label we're using right now, think about the wider picture for your dog, because very rarely do we see dogs who just show issues with strangers. That's actually a really rare case for me anyway. We're often seeing lots of other, or at least a few other, coexisting behavior challenges. So we might be seeing separation anxiety, sound sensitivity. We might be seeing resource guarding, dog issues, issues with handling. What is the full constellation? So that's what my first thoughts are when I'm thinking about a dog with stranger danger. And when I'm intaking any dogs into our programs, I'm looking at the behaviors, the function, the different triggers, and the bigger picture behind their behavior. All right, we're going to switch slides. Ready, everyone? Hold your breath. Did it do it? Oh my God.
No.
It didn't do it. You have to be joking me. This is the saddest thing. Okay, we're going to try one last thing, which is going to be for me to present this in a slightly different way and just share my screen. What this means, folks, is that I'm going completely off script. I have no notes, and it's going to be really fun and a wild ride for us all. And you're going to get to see my whole desktop. So to hell with privacy.
I believe in you. You can
Why
do
is my
it.
dog like this? Do you see that on the screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Why is my dog like this? Usually the second question that we get from folks. Why are we experiencing this from our dogs when the dog down the street shows none of these behaviors, right? Now, at CCA, we use this kind of 4-step framework when working with all behavior cases, and it looks at 4 different areas. And this is just one of many different ways that we can explain and understand behavior. So please don't think like this is the only way or the one truth. This is just how I like to explain this. But when it comes to the why, often people are like, was my dog abused? You know, what is it that's different? And honestly, it's an intersecting mix of many, many complex factors. It's never just one thing. The most important thing that I think, though, is that it's not your fault. as the guardian. It's not your dog's fault. Behavior is very, very complicated and is linked to so many different factors. So I'm going to use Hira as an example here. He had undiagnosed arthritis and it only got diagnosed last year at 6 years old. So I think that probably was contributing in many ways to his behavior because he's in pain, right? He also has now diagnosed generalized anxiety, which is something that he's had from birth. And he was the result of very poor breeding. He was, one of a sort of breeder that would breed 10, 20 litters a year. And he didn't have very good socialization. He was so fearful when he came to me that he pooped himself quite frequently from fear, which is very abnormal for a puppy. And I think as a result of his sensitivity and his pain, he probably experienced quite a lot of trauma in early life and adolescence, which I didn't really understand at the time because I was just learning. He was my first dog who I was like, what is this? This is not normal. Is this what's meant to happen? So his health played into things in a big way. I was living in New York at the time when I got him as a puppy at 4.5 months old, New York City. Not the ideal place for a dog with untreated arthritis, generalized anxiety, and a bunch of trauma, who has issues with people. And so he was constantly overexposed to triggers, just every single day, going to the bathroom, living in his house. It was a real struggle. Due to his anxiety and our environment, I really struggled to get his needs met. He was an adolescent poodle. He experienced a lot of like hyperactivity at a young age. He struggled to settle down in the home and relax. And he was, I think, simultaneously over and understimulated, overstimulated by the city, but understimulated in the ways that he needed to be stimulated, as a hunting dog. And I didn't really meet his needs as a poodle. Poodles are pretty powerful little creatures bred to hunt in the marshes, and he was just spending most of his time sleeping on a couch in Brooklyn. And it wasn't looking quite right for him in that way. And in the last category, we have learning. So he definitely experienced trauma many times. He was attacked by dogs at a young age on the street. He experienced scary instances of us being harassed on the street by people following us, shouting at us. That kind of stuff happens in New York sometimes when you're out and about, or just anywhere. I never actively tried to punish him, but I did accidentally coerce him. And by that I mean that I forced him, I pushed a lot, I didn't listen to him when he said no. And I was raised by two first-generation immigrants. I raised him like I was raised, I was like, oh, you will work hard and you will achieve and we'll push you as hard as I can. And that was not the right attitude because he broke, he did not bend. And he learned that barking, lunging, biting was the only way to get the space that he needed because of all of these complex things together. And you see how it's never just one thing, and how easy is it to go online and see someone being like, your dog's aggressive because of this. Well, absolute nonsense. I mean, it's behavior is complicated. There's a reason that we live with these dogs, right? They are emotionally deep. They have, this rich internal world that we identify, we see, and that's what makes us good companions, right? Did it happen? Did you see a slide change? Ah, we did
Yay!
it. Oh my God. Oh, that's the best.
Success.
All right, we're just going to have to go off script, folks. I have no idea what slide's coming up next. Let's see. Let's just go. We're going to go wild. If we are experiencing these sorts of behaviors from our dogs, I think it's really important before we even touch upon treatment and how we work with this to just chat about the cycle and how it affects and impacts the human beings. There is a cycle with our dogs who are very sensitive, where we have them reacting to triggers that might be people plus other things, developing a hypervigilance because just trying to get their needs met on a day-to-day basis is overexposing them. So we're unable to meet their needs and their dysregulation increases. And then their insensitivity to triggers increase and the cycle can continue. Has anyone noticed or experienced this with their dogs where you're trying to get them out to walk, but they're so triggered by everything that you can't even do your basic stuff? And then they're crazy in the house or they're really struggling to settle, and it can be a vicious cycle. And this is why when it comes to treatment, we need to have like a really holistic and integrative approach. Living with sensitive dogs can be really hard. And I experienced that for the first 4 years of mine in Hira's life. he got worse and worse and worse. I would try so many different things, and I watched a bunch of different videos, and I worked with different trainers, and I was an actual trainer at the time, and he was still getting worse. And I think there's no shame about this. I want to be really honest with everybody. Like, this was the reality, was that he ended up biting me, he ended up biting other people. What I have learned from working with Hira, and literally at this point it's thousands within CCA of dogs that struggle like him, is that although it can be really, really challenging, and we need to hold space for that, I also want to express that I have seen the most amazing capacity for healing in so many dogs who folks have thought would never be able to make progress and success. My own dog Hira, I was hoping that he'd tolerate a guest once a week. That was my end goal with him. I was like, maybe you'll be able to tolerate a guest once a week. He lives in a house with 3 other people. All of them have their partners over regularly. He makes friends in one sitting. He has 25 people in his inner circle. He goes on walks in London in like a pretty central place every single day without that being a challenge for him. And he recently attended my mum's 70th birthday party with 20 raucous Indians. So I'm pretty impressed. And honestly, every journey is different, but I just wanted to express that these dogs blow me away over and over again. They really do, especially when given the chance. And the chance for me means empowering the guardians with a kind of framework that they can work through that will help keep them on the right lines. And that's what I want to do today. I want to talk to you about how we heal from stranger danger, the steps that we go through. And I'm going to talk about 2 different stages of the process. The first stage that we're going to discuss right now, can you see a picture of me looking really cute? Kissing my dog, yeah. Okay, amazing. Yeah, I look really cute. Thanks. Um, thank you, everyone. This was him when he was a puppy. The first bit that I'm going to chat about now, this is like the foundation work. When Hira was 4 years old, I started the foundation work. And the foundation work that we developed with him and all of our other clients have led to a very special program that we teach called Feisty Fido, which you can learn more about. But fundamentally, the foundation work involves creating a base from which we can then build their therapy work with humans. Many people jump straight into trying to work around people. Have you ever done a dog training lesson or seen a video and they're like, you go outside and you look at strangers and then you give them food? From my perspective, often we're really missing quite a lot of stuff if we go straight into going out and trying to work. And for many of you, you might be thinking, my dog's explosive. The second they see a person, I can't even feed them. They won't even eat. They won't even play. Don't worry, that's okay. You need to start here. That's what that means. And I needed to start here too. When I first started this with Hira, our relationship was broken. He wouldn't eat food from my hands. He wouldn't sleep next to me because we didn't have a secure attachment, and he was in pain and he was chronically stressed, and all of these things. So the first step is to build a foundation. And at CCA, we use a framework that we've come up with again, the HEAL framework, these 4 steps. And I'm going to take you through it very, very briefly in relation to stranger danger. And this first step, the foundation, took me about a year to lay with Hira. And that might not be the case for your dogs. We might be talking about just a few months. Like, our programs are 12 weeks and we see incredible progress across those 3 months. But I'm just giving you an idea, like we can be talking about months, not really weeks in many cases. And that's totally okay because it's worth it, I promise. Let's chat about health. Okay, stranger danger dogs are highly likely to have undiagnosed medical issues, like super, super, super likely. So medical investigations are a part of the treatment process. I will not do stranger setups until I am pretty confident that that dog is not in pain. And I say that as someone who was burned training a dog for 5 years, not realizing that every time I asked them to sit, it hurt, right? It's really important that we look at underlying discomfort. We might be seeing physiotherapists. We might be looking at GI issues, diet. I actually have a full webinar available on our website about pain and behavior with a veterinarian, because I'm not a veterinarian. This is something that we do in collaboration with vets, with physiotherapists, etc., to make sure, nutritionists sometimes, to make sure that our bases are covered. And honestly, the medical world is quite challenging. Sometimes an advocate can be helpful, and that's also sometimes what we do with our clients, is we kind of help them navigate, where to go first, who like triaging different things, etc. So this in and of itself can be a massive part of the process, and you'll see that also includes treatment for anxiety and stress. That's this little stressed out brain here. This little stressed out brain cannot learn. This little stressed out brain cannot rest properly. And it's going to be very challenging if we have dogs who are, living in Manhattan, living in Austin, living in London, living in places that are very busy. If you have to use the bathroom and go outside every day and you're surrounded by people, humans are pretty much everywhere on this planet. So if I'm a dog and I'm scared of people, I might need some help managing that on a medicinal level, and there's no shame in that. So we're looking to collaborate with veterinarians, veterinary behaviorists, and folks who can make sure that our dog's physical health is in check. Next, we have to look at their exposure. We have to understand their limits. So what is it that they can handle and what is it that they can't handle? And we have to make adjustments to shield them. Again, I have a whole webinar just on this topic. So you can go to our website, to our free webinar library, and you can watch an hour on just this, in the home and on walk. So we break it down. But in general, we're thinking about, how do we get their bathroom needs met without them worrying or barking or having moments of dysregulation where they're feeling unpleasant. Think about it this way. Every time they're having a negative experience with people, money is going in that bank account, that people are bad and scary. That behavior is being strengthened. They are learning, this is how I get my needs met. So how do we cut off their ability to rehearse these behaviors? Potty walks, getting their exercise needs met. How do you collect packages? Tradespeople, visitors and guests, all of these are common trigger points that when you're working with a behavior consultant, we'll go into detail. I want to see your house. I want to see where the packages come. I want to, the details depend on the dog, but we're managing the dog's emotions, the dog's experience, but also safety for everyone. If we have a dog that is lunging and barking, that does not mean that they will never bite. So if we have a dog that is lunging and barking, we should be really taking that seriously. They're going, I feel really unsafe, guys. Like, this is not okay. And in those cases, I will be maintaining safety for everyone in my neighborhood and my community and my household, but also for my dog, because one of the most dangerous things a dog can do is bite a human for their own well-being. We're pretty much in charge and we don't like it when they bite us. And it's dangerous for some dogs, especially certain breeds. So we need to be keeping our dogs safe. We need to be keeping our neighborhood safe. That could look like muzzles. That could look like signage, stay away. That could look like practicing a firm no, please do not approach us with your dog on leash, so that you're practicing that if people approach you. But I often say to my like guardians who work with us, I want us to get to a point where we are not having reactions on a daily basis to people, because we don't need money constantly going in that bank account that people are scary, people are scary, people are scary. How can we manage the daily life and getting their needs met without overexposure? If I don't get my yoga class and my meditation and my monthly night out with my friends, I can be a pretty horrible person to be around. I have certain needs that I need to do things to regulate my bodies, and your dogs are the same, especially certain breeds and especially certain age groups. And so when we're looking at dogs with stranger danger, before I even touch on introducing them to people, I'm like, is this dog vibing on a day-to-day basis? Is their body feeling good? Do we need to change their schedule? Are they getting enough sleep? Because stranger danger dogs tend to be vigilant. They tend to really worry. Hera was like that. Hera would be barking at noises 40 to 50 times a day in our apartment in Brooklyn. He was dedicated to the cause of protecting the house, and he was working overtime, and he was exhausted, right? So before I can even touch on making him feel better about people, I needed to address these basic things. Is he getting 18 hours of sleep a day, as most adult dogs need? He certainly wasn't, and he was sleep deprived and cranky so and so because of it. So you can see how these foundations are important, because without these foundations laid, there is no way we can even touch upon learning. And learning is what it's just training, teaching, whatever you want to call it. When you teach dogs things, you talk to them and you use good things that they like to communicate with them. I think training is a bit of a weird word. It's no different to teaching a kid in a class or teaching another human student. These are some of the skills that we utilize with stranger danger dogs. We often will construct a toolkit individualized to your dog. 2 to 3 skills really maximum. We're not looking for a big fancy behavior repertoire. I don't need your dogs to heal. I don't need your dogs to do these fancy things. A few key exercises, a few key communication tools worked very, very well, taught very, very well to a very high degree and a high level. Maybe some of these bullet points stick out to you and you can recognize some of them. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to have time to go into every single potential modality of therapy that we could use for your dogs. Instead, I'm going to leave that slide for you. You can do some Googling if you want to learn a few more things about some of these. I want to actually talk more about the next stages. So what you've seen so far is the foundations, laying the foundations. And at this point, once we've gone through the HEAL framework and once we've made sure that we're ticking off all of these things, we tend to have a very different dog to the dog that we had at the beginning. We have a dog who's much more regulated. We tend to have humans who are much more in tune with the dog as well and feel much more secure about their day-to-day life with the dog, which makes life a lot easier, because low-key, it's really stressful if you haven't gone through those 4 things. And once you've got here, then we can start building that inner circle. Can you see a building that inner circle slide on the screen right now? Oh, I'm so happy we fixed this tech issue. How good are we, my loves? And this is Hero looking quite happy, I think, because I think over the last 4 years, he has physically changed. He used to be very serious. And these days, he's a goofball. And he's a goofball because we have built a positivity bias around humanity by expanding his inner circle of friends. He used to have 1 to 2 friends. It was mostly me. Mostly me and him. Maybe like I had a trainer friend who he was like pretty okay with, but still not super okay with. And I always imagined in his head, for the first 4 years, I imagined that there was this like weighing scales, and every bad experience he had, whether it be that person who surprised him walking around the corner when he was doing the pee, or the man who yelled at us on the street and chased us, all of those were putting experiences in humans are unsafe, humans are unsafe, humans are unsafe. And he had a lot of weight on that side, on that belief, behind that belief. And I'd made the mistake of trying to introduce him to loads of people. I was like, this is how I make him feel good about people, right? I just introduce him to loads of people. They give him cookies. He feels good. Unfortunately, the mistake I made was that I focused on quantity, not quality. I tried to introduce him to lots of people, and he had a kind of medium, lukewarm experience. What I should have really done, and what I've learned is the best way I find to address these cases, is to build them into their actual inner circle. An inner circle means that, he will get goofy. He'll roll on his back. He'll lick their face. They can lay on their bed, like he feels as good with them as he does with you. And I'm sure your dogs, you're in their inner circle, right? And I'm sure there maybe are 1 or 2 other people in that inner circle. You can often tell when you join into the inner circle of a dog's kind of life. How many folks have tried stranger danger intros before and done something like, walk up slowly, have them toss cookies, maybe build, like try to build some good feelings. That's exactly what I did with Hero as well. And unfortunately, it did not work. It didn't work because I hadn't split it up enough for him. I thought I was going really slow, but actually I was going really, really quickly for him. And when I started to really slow down and listen to him, I was able to realize that I was moving too quickly. And we're going to go through the 4 steps that we use in general. And again, there are 100 ways to bake a cake. I love making things 4 steps, 3 quick, easy ways. You know, we want to package things in a way that's super accessible, but just do remember that nothing is ever this simple. But this is a useful framework you could use. Once you build your foundation using the HEAL framework, you might be ready to start introducing them to new people, one person at a time, bringing them into the inner circle using a system. Our system is 4 steps. We start off at a distance. And I had a client in our program last year who started off at like 150 feet. And that ended up now having 4 people in their inner circle 2 years later. Pretty cool. Starting off at a distance, then getting a little more comfy up close. And I call this section trust, this step trust, because it's you're getting a little closer. And often at this stage, this is often when we go into greet. I like to hang back and let them gather information from this kind of distance to start off with. Then we offer them a greeting and an opportunity to gather information, and then we build a relationship over time. This happens often over many different setups. So I had to do, like at the beginning with Hero, the first friend that he made, it took him about 6 different like meetings to go through these 4 stages and to actually bond and feel comfortable with that person. So prepare for there to maybe be repetition and we have to go at the dog's pace, but that's totally okay. Let's go into a little bit of each step, and I have some videos to give you some sort of examples, and then we'll take some questions because I'm sure that there's nuance and detail that you guys want to go into. So distance work. This is Hera. Look at how cute he is. This is our park. And I'm working on building comfort at a distance. Now, there are, like I said, many different ways to do this. You saw some of the learning skills that we might have worked on with the dogs. I like to use sometimes food, sometimes toys. Sometimes I don't use either. Like in this training session, we're just using distance, and there's a big group of people and kids doing weird stuff at a distance. And I'm far enough away that he's able to look at them and then go back to sniffing, and look at them and go back to sniffing. This would have been impossible 4 years ago. He can also get a bit goofy around them. He can roll and dig and kind of be his silly, goofy self. This is him at his absolute most comfortable. And sorry, I took this from Instagram, so ignore the very scary large text there on the screen. My goal in distance work is not to loose leash walk them up to the new person using cookies to feed them. My goal is actually to really use the lower value foods if I'm using food and genuinely ask them, how are you feeling? Like, how are you doing? There's no room for kind of lying when we do this, because I don't want the dog to be like, I'm totally fine, and then freak out when they get too close, which is exactly what Hera used to do, because Hera loves food and he loves toys and he loves to work for them. And I had to be really careful. So building comfort from a distance is our first step. Often setting up setups, literally learning setups. Maybe that's one person at a distance and we have them on a leash or something like that. And we're working on them just observing the trigger. Maybe they're sniffing, maybe they're rolling, maybe they're snuffling for food. It really depends on the dog. And slowly building up the distance between the two. So often we're starting with quite large distances, and over time, maybe multiple setups, we get closer and closer. So number 2, trust, is the slide you should be seeing on the screen now. We're going to talk a little bit about this second stage. So this is where we build up to 10 within 10 feet. And I want the trigger usually acting naturally, but not like staring at or reaching for the dog. So you'll notice that there's a lot of space for the dog to observe and gather information without the human doing anything and without the human trying to engage with them. This is because I often find dogs will go too close for comfort and then kind of suddenly panic. Anyone experience that where their dogs like go right up and they're like, oh, hey, and they're like, no, and they freak out? That's exactly what Hera used to do. And in my head, I just say, this is bad boundaries. You don't know how to set boundaries for yourself, mate. Like, you don't actually feel good about this. You don't know how to set boundaries, so I'm going to do it for you. And I'm slowing them down. I'm saying, I know you want to speed right over there and get in their face and be like, where did you go to school? What's your name? What's your date of birth? No, hang back, sniff a bit, breathe. It'll feel better. Um, and we do build up. So this is a dog in Vancouver called Summer. I've clipped this video a little bit funny to just get the Guardian's face out of the frame. But this was Summer's like second or third setup with a stranger. The stranger is holding the phone and filming. And they've been doing a setup in the local park, and this is Canada, so it's very cold apparently. And you'll notice that at the beginning of this setup, Summer is eating her cookies, but she is glancing over at the stranger a few times. And she does show like some signs to me that indicate she's a little bit stressed. There she goes to sniff the tree and raises her paw. And the Guardian is playing a series of games that we have learned and we have practiced 1,000 times outside of this context around many other distractions. So it's really easy for us to read Summer's body language. And we're doing a lot of approaching and retreating where Summer is able to engage with the trigger if she wants. She is not asked to, she's not pressured to. We are just going through a predictable game, a predictable pattern that she can engage with. And it's essentially a two-way conversation. What you will never see in any of our videos around this kind of stuff is us telling the dogs what to do necessarily and giving them too many instructions. I want them to express themselves personally. This is how I like to work. I like the therapy to be very dog-led, meaning that the dog is really in charge and I'm constantly looking at the dog and how the dog feels and then adjusting the criteria. So in our program here, every week they did a setup and they filmed it, and then they came to class and we dissected it and we made adjustments, and then they did a setup the next week. And that's how we like to work with our clients so that we can really help them build real excitement around these new people. And eventually these two ended up walking around together and successfully came into the inner circle and entered the home and were able to come and have movie nights eventually in the home with Summer just chilling on her bed. But it all started with like 4 or 5 outdoor greetings to go through these stages. So sometimes it's a lot slower than we think at the beginning, and that's okay, right? I really recommend videoing these sessions because you get a lot of information from them, and it's only when we're really certain that the dog is able to do this that we will offer them the opportunity to go closer than like 10 feet, 6 feet. And there are often safety considerations at play as well. So by no means is this a blueprint or is this actual training advice. This is just kind of like an overview of what it might look like. At this stage, we might be using gates, we might be using muzzles, there might be other tools to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. The general idea here is that we teach our dogs how to greet. We like teach a greeting ritual, which often looks like a kind of approach retreat situation. So this is a known person and we're teaching the dog to kind of go and say hi and then come back to their human for a little cookie. And we teach this and then we apply it in lots of different real life scenarios with known human beings. So say there are 2 people in your dog's inner circle. Maybe it's like Guardian 1, Guardian 2. We'll practice the greeting when Guardian 2 comes home from work, say, for example. We'll practice the greeting in the park with someone who they know. So we rehearse the greeting. As an autistic person, I wish we did this for humans. That would be amazing. I would love to be able to practice the greetings with people and have it be predictable, because that is a huge part of, I think, a lot of the fear for these dogs is the unpredictability of it all. I want to show you next a video from that's Hera, my dog, doing a greeting in real life, in real time, with a brand new person that he had never met before. I think there's sound on this as well, because I want you to hear the conversation. And this is my friend's cousin who had been briefed on the situation with the dogs beforehand. And I want you to see what it might look like. Sort of this was 2 years into the process.
Yeah, that's make life a lot easier. Who's that? Good boy. Do you want to go say hi? Do you mind if I use you as a stranger to greet him? I'm going to say go say hi. Do you just ignore him if that's... Go say hi, go say hi. Good, yes, good boy. Well done, excellent. Well done, Poo-Poo. Yes, that's what it is. How do you want more before you go? You can say hi to him this time. Go say hi, go say hi, go say hi. Hello. Good boy. Well done, excellent. He can be a bit scared, so I'm just introducing him to new men. Thank you, you were perfect. Hira bumping into Aggie on the way to get his cookie is a bit silly. Everyone could see that video okay of the greeting? Yeah, nice. Okay. What I noticed in those videos with Hira is that he'll approach, he'll have a little waggy tail, and then I pulled him away and he'd do multiple little greetings to greet people where he got to kind of let the air out of the, like, it's like a can that's been fizzied up. You get to like let it out little bit by little bit without him getting too overwhelmed. And this sort of greeting ritual was what worked for him. There are many different versions of this, but I want you to think about what is the greeting ritual for your dog going to be? How can we make it as predictable as possible? How are we practicing this? How is the communication taking place with them? And importantly, we want it to be quite brief at the beginning. Take a bit of information, move away. Take a bit of information, move away, to help them learn to not stay too close and get super overwhelmed once up close. At this point, it's time to build an actual relationship with the new person. They've greeted, they've gathered some information. Now what's next? Depends on the dog. For this dog here, it looked like playing. Playing was one of the ways that we were building the bond and the relationship between him and this is a new person here. And you might notice that the trainer averts her eye contact from him. You know, she's editing her behavior to try and be as like minimally scary to him as possible. And when it comes to bonding, it really depends on the dog. For some dogs, it's play. For some dogs, it's walking together. For some dogs, it's cuddling. For some dogs, it's food related things. It depends on the dog. But this is an important part, especially the first few people that they build a relationship with. It's really important that we teach them that they will be listened to. So the people you choose for those first few relationships are really, really important. We want those people to be observant, people who will follow instructions, people who respect your opinions and your boundaries around your dogs. Low-key, that was not my family when I first started. It took them a while to get on board. It's really hard to tell your 70-year-old Indian mother to not pet the poodle. But I had to. And she learned, and I had to teach her how to read his body language, because otherwise she wasn't going to be able to be in his life. It was an important part of that healing process for all of us. So the first few people you pick are really important. And it might look like this. It might not look like anything like this. It might look like you're coexisting with boundaries in place. That might be the kind of dog that you have. So we have another dog in our house right now called Tip, and there will always be a muzzle involved. There will always be a gate involved. There will always be a leash involved because of his history and his behavior history. The individual safety recommendations can only be given in like consultation type settings. But this dog was an example of a dog who we decided was going to just learn to chill in the pen while in the house. And they would only hang out with people and like play and stuff outdoors. And so for this dog, building the bond involved teaching them that when the new people walked past the pen, that was totally safe, good things were going to happen. And they really struggled with people bending down. So we would work occasionally on someone like bending down to pick something up and then reinforcing them for hanging out there. There is going to be another repetition in a second. Give the video a moment. So I guess what I'm saying by this in this relationship section is that it's not one size fits all. It looks different for every dog. And so here he comes. This dog is learning right now that when this person bends down, this is a new person in her house, she's going to get a yes, what a good girl, and a cookie thrown at her. So this is what the bonding looked like for her. It wasn't playing. It was just in the home learning to just chill while people moved around her. It looks boring, right? All my training looks really boring. It's like really not fun and sexy to watch. Like it's not Cesar Millan. It is regulated, confident, calm human beings and dogs who look not even like a little bit like they're going to tip over and freak out, right? That's what happens when you take it really slow. That's what I mean by like quality over quantity. I would rather you have one person in their inner circle done really well than 5 people where they feel a bit iffy. It's super important. I would much rather see it be done well, so that they actually develop unconflicted, purely positive, overwhelmingly positive, good feelings about those people, and that can then build from there. I'm going to pause here for a second because I'm not quite done, and I want to just go back to, sorry guys, to this page. And I'll finish up in just 2 minutes, Miranda. It might take you quite a long time to go through this process with your first new person. And of course, this is adjustable. Like it's never just one size fits all, but it might take you a while to go through this. Like I said, with Hira, the first person I brought into his inner circle, it took like 5 or 6 different interactions, different greetings to go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 and step 4. But with every additional person that I added in, it got shorter and shorter. And now I tend to find, this is personal and anecdotal evidence, I tend to find that when you get to around 5 to 10 in a circle people, that's when the magic really starts to happen. That's when they start to actually see humans as a good thing. Those weighing scales start to shift over to the other side. And I saw the most ridiculous things with Hira. A lot of the people that I introduced him to at the beginning, the first 10 people, were mostly small, queer types, lots of shaved heads, lots of tattoos, lots of black hoodies. And he would actively go to gay people in the park and be like, hey, because he had learned that visually those people are cool and fun. He then became best friends with my dad, who is Irish and an elderly man, bald, wears a lot of shirts. And he started going up to bald white men and being like, oh, hey, what's up, friend? What's going on? Like, it was ridiculous to watch his bias actually shift from negative to positive. And slowly we were able to build more and more challenging people into his life. Now he has relationships with quite a few men, which were before it would have been impossible to do that. We had to start with easier people. And my brother, who it was originally pretty much a nightmare for Hira, they're now besties. My brother can come over unannounced, walk into the home unannounced, and just rock up and play and hang out with him, no issues. So what I'm not saying that like this like 180 kind of style is always available for every dog, but I think that celebrating wins like this is super, super important. And reminding folks that the process can seem arduous and there are lots of steps. And often at the beginning, I remember like 4 years ago, if you had told me I would have been here now, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have been like, that's an actual lie. That's ridiculous. And like I said, I was happy for him to just manage 1 visit a week. And that might be where we end up. Like we have another dog in our house and that will be where he ends up. He'll always be behind a gate, you know? So it really depends. The end goal depends. But I think it's very cool to see that when we actually take the time to lay a foundation first, you know, the same kind of care that we would take with a human therapy program where we really investigate all these different areas and then we slowly and strategically start to expand that inner circle. It can go from like, and apologies for swearing, like a real shit show like it was with me and Hira for many years. Things can really change and we can get that shift from negativity bias to positivity bias over time. So I think that's me pretty much finishing up. Just want to say thank you to everyone who has stood with us through tech issues. And I'm excited to hear some questions and dive into some of the areas maybe a little bit more.
Yeah, that's me finishing.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And I love ending on a hopeful ending. I know that that is a hard thing for many folks who have a dog who has behaviors that are not what they wish it would be. Okay, I know that there are some questions in the chat. So I'm going to start with some of the ones that I've seen. If yours is before this or is way earlier in the chat, feel free to throw it in there again. Okay, so first question, what kinds of games can you play when your dog is muzzled and can't eat treats from the ground?
This is a very good question. First of all, I quite like my muzzles to be able to be fitted such that the dogs can eat treats from the ground. That's kind of one of my number one things when I'm picking a good muzzle for the dogs. So a good example that we have in our house right now is Tip. If anyone watches us on social media, he's all over our social media because he's just so gorgeous. I can't stop posting about him. And he's a 70-kilogram Malinois Greyhound mix with a pretty gnarly bite history. That means he will always be muzzled around in the public, you know, around in outside of my house. He will always be muzzled. And I have had to buy him a new muzzle and teach him to eat food out of off the floor with the muzzle as part of his program, because I actually wanted him searching for food. I didn't want him to just wait for it to be delivered. I wanted him searching for it because for him, that was part of the regulation that he needed around new people. So it might be that that's actually one of our goals. If you do struggle because of your dog's face shape or size, lickable can also work. So smearing food on the floor can work as a way of doing it. And then in terms of play, usually it's roughhousing and social play, bit of body play and touch. These are all reinforcers that I use a lot. So massage and touching and like that kind of stuff for dogs with muzzles, all very, very, very useful. But yeah, definitely want to use a nice muzzle that you can pick up the food from the floor, and usually a big basket muzzle. The Muzzle Up project is a great resource for anyone who wants to learn more about appropriately sized muzzles, etc. like that. So yeah, definitely. And definitely, obviously, we bring that in slowly over time as much as we can, you know, instead of just doing it all at once.
Awesome.
That was a good question.
Okay, information on dogs with some touch sensitivity. So if your stranger averse dog is also fearful of being touched by strangers, especially things like vets, sports judges, etc.
Interesting. So I'm going to look at that HEAL framework. I'm going to go back to the foundation with this dog, right? And I'm going to think about the basics around this dog's behavior. So health-wise, dogs who struggle with being touched, from my experience, often have something going on in the health category. Not 100% of the time, but I'm like a lot of percent of the time, a lot of percent of the time, we are seeing that there's going to be something medical going on with dogs who are experiencing like touch sensitivity. So fully investigating that is my number one thing. And then secondly, thinking about exposure. So health was the first category, right? Second, we look at exposure. For Hera, for example, I needed to stop all unnecessary stranger interactions. So sports and showing, competing, all of that would have fallen under that category. For him, it also involved really vigilant potty walks. For him, it also involved, you know, I had to fully sedate him at the vet for a while. When he needed to go to the vet, he was fully knocked out for a minute. That was part of our plan. Let me get some visuals up so that we can actually kind of use this and place it all within the framework, right? So we're looking really at the pain, discomfort, and illness. I'm looking at canine physiotherapy. I'm looking at GI issues. I'm double checking, I'm watching this webinar basically to double check that there's nothing physical going on with my dog, because spidey senses are always tingling. And then let's look at the exposure. We're probably not going to be doing sports with this dog. We're probably not going to be showing with this dog, because that's going to contribute to their negative associations around people in such a big way that it's going to massively impact your progress in the long run, right? Think about how much you remember a bad or scary experience compared to a good one.
Just like introspect for a moment. Like, you remember that one time you said the wrong thing in class in grade 5 and everyone laughed, right? You don't remember every single A grade that you got or every single time someone told you you were funny or nice. We remember the negative stuff more. So it's super important that we shield them from that. So these are the two things I'm really thinking about with this dog. How are we going to get their medical needs met without it being super triggering? Often medications are involved. Sometimes we do things like happy visits, etc. But let's be perfectly honest. If we have a dog that's lunging and barking at people from 100 feet away, I'm not going to be doing happy visits to the vet to try and get them comfortable in the vet. No, just I'm going to knock the dog out because it's not going to work. We're skipping a million steps in trying to train them to be comfortable in the veterinary clinic if they can't even make a new friend outside of a veterinary context. So I think it's, and what I love about my extremely neurodivergent systems is that it forces us to not skip steps. I'm a notorious step skipper, and it forces us to really slow down. So with this dog, I'm thinking we go right back to basics. And we look at the health and we look at the exposure and we think about the ways that we can tighten up there and then go from there.
And then Karishma, I might have you send me that webinar. We got a question from someone who said our closest vet is 600K away, no easy physical access to get physio and things like that. So it sounds like there's a bunch of folks who are looking for more resources around how to identify or what symptoms to look out for that they could talk to a vet about.
Yeah, 100%. Let me pop the link to our webinar library right now in the chat.
Perfect.
So we have a free webinar library. It's on our website, and you'll be looking at the pain and behavior webinar, which is with an amazing vet called Dr. Rendon from the Williamsburg Vet Clinic, and she has a special interest. She has a special she has a special interest in behavior, pain, and medicine. So she's just a great resource, and it does give you more kind of avenues to go down and kind of some roadmaps in that area, because often it's it's challenging enough to navigate the human healthcare system, let alone the dog healthcare system. So I feel you there.
Absolutely. Okay. How do you slow down the introduction process for your dog, say outside, because that's an easier environment, so that they don't rush in too close for their own comfort in such a way that you also are not introducing tension by holding the leash too tight?
What a good question. That's a nuanced question. And honestly, the answer is it really depends on the dog. It depends massively on the dog, how we're going to do that. I can give you some examples of what I did with Hero. This is by no means specific dog training advice, but just let me give you paint some pictures for you. We could be working using leash techniques that are created by people like Grisha Stewart. So like behavior adjustment training is a fantastic tool in our toolkit when it comes to slowing down dogs who want to barge into situations that they are just not prepared for. I will often use food, sniffing, and searching as a way of slowing dogs down as well, because we tend to find that when our dogs are barreling straight towards a trigger, they're not actually breathing, like they're either hyperventilating like that, but they're certainly not sniffing the ground, gathering information, and doing the things that would normally calm them down. It's kind of like if I'm on a first date and I start talking really quickly and I'm not breathing properly and I'm getting myself all nervous because I'm just like kind of in this cycle. It's the same thing. So we teach them regulating exercises outside of stressful contexts, and then we bring those into the stressful contexts depending on the dog. There are some dogs for whom I would want to use very little tension in the leash, and I wouldn't even want to touch leash exercises and leash games. And there are other dogs where I'm like, all right, we need to learn how to use this leash like a pair of horse reins, because this dog we need to like gain some nuance around this. There are some dogs for whom I want to use food, and for others where I'm like, hell no, we're not using food in this context. So I really can't give you a one size fits all. But I can tell you that it can be done. Even if it feels like it can't. I really, really can.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have a bunch of questions about this where the dog might be okay with people outside, but they're worst in the home? And how do we deal with the home issue, knowing that you usually can't get 150 feet away from someone in your home?
Great question. There are usually two different ways that I address this personally. And again, remembering a million ways to bake a cake, I'm just a baker. So I'm not the only one. There's lots of different ways you could do this, but I tend to find there are two different setups in this case. One is that we get to know the person outside and then we come in together. So that's what happened with Summer, the German Shepherd, in that video. They met in the park. That park was a 10-minute walk from their home. They did 4 setups in the park. Then on the 5th setup, they walked home together, but didn't go into the house. And then on the 6th setup, they walked home together and hung out for 10 minutes in the home while Summer did a little relaxation exercise that she'd learned. And then they left. So often I reverse engineer it, because people coming through the door, that's often the absolute hell no. I've been triggered 1,000 times by this and I will lose my shit. I'm sorry, probably shouldn't swear in this, but I will lose it very quickly in that context. Anyone else experience that? Like if someone comes in through the door, they're already so triggered that there is no saving them. It took me about 2 years before I started to do door greetings with Hira, because the door was so stressful that I was like, screw the door. Okay, we'll meet people in the park and then we'll walk, or we'll meet people on the street and then we'll walk into the house together. And it was only once I'd got to a certain level that I brought the door back in at the end. And that's often part of like the bonding process. I find it's at the end that we'll add in things like the door and stuff like that. So starting outside, coming in together and acknowledging that inside is often the hardest, so it comes at the end. I often do bonding games outside first before they even come inside. I often practice settling outside before they even come inside and just hanging out, because why not? If we can, why not, right? Option number 2, though, some dogs can't go outside because they're too scared to be outside. And I work with a lot of dogs in Manhattan and New York. And you try doing stranger setups in New York. You know, there's like 150 feet, as if like you can't. There are people everywhere. It's not going to happen. In those cases, sometimes we're literally doing setups in the home where the dog is usually taken away. The guest comes in and then the dog enters after the guest, and then we have a greeting routine that we practice that way. We're flying a bit closer to the sun, to use that Icarus kind of analogy. It's going to be a little bit more dangerous. I might be using more safety measures. I might be using extra anxiety management medication, especially if we're in a small space, and that's going to be adding extra pressure on. So it's a balancing act. This is an art as well as a science. I really do believe that. But those are sort of 2 ways that we might address the indoor situation. And then I guess actually lastly is that often we will bond and do all our games outside and they'll be like, woohoo! And then we'll come inside and they'll be like, okay, well, no, I don't know anymore. And we have to go back to the beginning again. And we have to start all the way from the beginning inside. And that's okay. Because when you go to a higher weight, you do fewer reps, right? When you are lifting heavier, you might lift fewer repetitions to avoid injury. And think of it like that. When you've gone into the house, you're lifting heavier. So you're going to do like 5 minutes. It's going to be super easy. And then they're going to leave and it's going to be the end. And that's not going backwards. That's actually moving forwards. I think that's an important part of understanding this as well. Yeah, it's quite
Awesome.
complicated.
Yeah. Okay, so the age-old question: I have a dog with stranger danger. They're worse in the home. What do I do about situations where I need to have people in my home?
That happens 100%. It's happened to me many times. I think common contexts around this are like tradesfolk, folks who need to come in to like do work around the house, maybe supers who need to come in to, if you're renting, to like check the property. Sometimes unavoidable social engagements, although I made it a personal mission of mine with my boundaries at the time to make sure that it was important for me that, you know, even if my family wanted to come over, I would say no. And that was a boundary that I held. But for some people, you don't have that option. Like you need to have someone over for some reasons. You have options. Option number 1 would be to confine the dog. Confinement is often stressful, but it is often safe. I would rather have, like, if you have someone coming in just quickly for 10 minutes. I would rather the dog be in a back room, even if they're upset, than they be there with you. And I know many of us are like, it'll be better if they're here and they can see and I can help them and give them treats. No, no. I think we really want to differentiate between a learning moment and a management moment. There are times where we're doing therapy. And when we're doing therapy, we're using these frameworks and there are these systems and it is collaborative with the dog. And then there are times where we just have to get through it. We're in survival mode, you know, and those are two different things. And sometimes survival mode, like for Hira, I would sometimes give him situational anxiety medication. He would go upstairs. I would blast the TV so he couldn't hear anything. And I would make sure that the people came in through the back door so that it was as quiet as possible and he didn't hear. But there were definitely times where he was not happy. But it was the best I could do. And I'm a single guardian and that's okay. You know, I would always have to just acknowledge that if that did happen, we had maybe some negative weight went into the wrong side and he had some negative experiences. I have to now counter that and kind of balance it out a little bit. So I think number one is I would rather they be confined and safely away from the hustle and bustle of a situation, even if that's challenging for them. And speaking to a veterinarian can be really helpful to manage through those moments. And I'd be really careful about trying to kind of train your way through it. I see a lot, I did this a lot, like freestyling a lot, like the person comes over, I get my cookies, yes, treat, this is good, we're building good associations. Sometimes if you're lucky, but other times we are just making it a little worse by kind of it not being quite the right setup for the dog and us not having quite the right amount of control over it. And I definitely made mistakes, like, you know, I let him greet my super in New York, who then went at him. Who does that when a dog says hi to you? But that's what he did. That was a mistake of mine, right? I shouldn't have been training in that moment because I couldn't control his behavior properly. So yeah, thinking about like, it's okay to just manage through a situation. You don't have to always be training. And sometimes it's just like survival mode, not that's okay. Yeah.
Okay, two advocacy things around the vet. So one is my dog doesn't like people, but seems to do okay if I hand over the leash. And you know, should I be doing that, or is she more just shut down? And then the other piece is many vets don't want to sedate unless they absolutely have to. So what are some ways that you can advocate for why a sedation might be needed?
Yeah, these are great questions. Okay, I'm going to take a breath before I answer it to make sure that I do this question justice, because this is an area that I think is a challenging conversation to have, because there is a lot of misconception, I think, around animal behavior and dog behavior and what is good for them and what is necessary. Many practitioners still think that it's better for the dogs to be taken away from their guardians because often they see less behaviors from the dogs within those contexts. Okay. What we tend to see in these moments is dogs who are in a free state. They're not actually feeling better about being in that context and having those things done to them. They often just don't really know what else to do. And often what was actually happening is that without that secure attachment figure, they don't have the confidence to fight back. And when we do see dogs entering that really full panic mode, they have options: fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? So Hero would try and run away from the vet to start off with. And if that didn't work, he might try licking the vet and then maybe jumping up on the vet, and then he'd growl, and then he'd snap, and then he'd flail, and then all sorts of great things would happen from that point onwards. If I was there, that would happen. If that didn't happen, he'd sit in the crate and wait. The whole time he was having a really bad experience still, right? He was still having a bad experience. The weight was still going in the wrong place. He was learning that people were bad and scary. And I was actually teaching him to suppress and teaching him to shut down. And what that often leads to is dogs that explode out of nowhere. Dogs who go inside themselves and then out of nowhere suddenly snap, and that's what he did that for years, and I didn't understand why until I started to unpack all of this stuff later on, going, okay, that makes sense. So if we are seeing professionals who are advocating for that, my question is, are these the right professionals to be working with your dog, right? Because they have a serious misunderstanding about behavior. Yeah, and that's concerning to me. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, I totally understand the risks of sedation, and this is often like a conversation that I'll have with sometimes guardians are like, I don't know, should I really sedate my dog? There are risks, etc. I completely understand that. There are risks to using medications, there are risks to sedation. The risks of chronic stress, the risks of not getting veterinary treatment because they're so upset and scared of the veterinary experience, the risks of their behavior around people getting worse and their behavior escalating, to me, often outweigh the medical risks. That is an individual call that needs to be taken, you know, with you, your guardian are the expert in your dogs, right? So you're the ones who make that call. If I'm seeing veterinarians disregarding your opinion, that's another red flag for me. If you're saying, I think my dog needs to be sedated, and they're saying, no, I don't agree with you, and there's not really a conversation there, are they the right practitioner to be working with your dog? The challenge comes when we're in areas where we don't have accessible other healthcare options. I totally understand this is not ideal. And I have done my fair share of talking to veterinarians for my clients, writing letters to veterinarians for my clients, and low-key coaching my clients in what to say to get what they need. And this is something that happens in the medical field all the time. Medical advocacy is a whole job, right? And I'm not technically qualified, but I try my best to point people in the right direction. And it might be things like getting a second opinion, asking for a second opinion from someone within the practice, calling another vet for a second opinion to see if they think the same thing. And sometimes I just straight up ask for exactly what I want. And I am that parent who is like, I would like this. How do we make it happen? What do we need to do to make it happen? And if then there's a hard no from them, I move on to the next practitioner and find a way. So yeah, I totally get that struggle. Was that both of the questions?
Yep. And
so.
if folks are looking for more resources on that, we actually have a free webinar all about how to advocate for your pets at the vet on a behavioral perspective. And it's from a vet tech who has a lot of experience with figuring out how to say no or figuring out how to stop a process when you're feeling overwhelmed. So that's out there.
What an excellent resource, because truly for me, I script it in my head.
Yes.
And I will script it with my clients, and we will be literally have written down scripts about what we're going to say, what happens if this happens, what happens if this happens. It can be really, really helpful. And yeah, I didn't know you had that. I'm going to watch that now.
Yeah. I'll send you the link.
Please.
Okay, I'm going to give you one last question, and I really like this one. How do you handle feeling frustrated with reactions and not letting it impact your training or your relationship building with your dog?
Oof. All right. Well, took me about 5 years to gain any traction on that one, to be perfectly frank. But this is where I think the beauty of this work lies, because a big reason that I was seeing reactions, a big reason I was feeling frustration with Hira and not seeing the progress that I wanted to, a lot of that was because of I had a misunderstanding of him in general. I didn't really understand him. And so when things went wrong, I didn't know why they were going wrong. And it was very frustrating for me because I didn't understand. For me, this is my personal experience. It was the lack of understanding. It was the lack of being able to zoom out and see where we are in the journey. I often say, like, we often say it's hard to see the forest through the trees. And I think that's often the case with many folks in the middle of this journey with their dogs. And for me, number one, you got to focus on taking care of yourselves. You know, your dogs are probably pretty high needs, meaning that you have to expend a lot of energy to meet their needs. And there are probably a lot of demands placed on you from them, from many other areas of your life. And I think one big thing for me was realizing that this was going to be a multiple year long process for Hera specifically. And just to let you know, Hera has sound sensitivity, handling aggression. He has stranger aggression. He's scared of people, every single environment. He has everything. So when I'm talking multiple years as a timeline, that's very specific to him. But when I realized that that was what was going to happen, that I was like, oh, okay, so I'm not failing for it not being fixed right now. Oh, okay. So actually, when he had that reaction, that has no reflection of me and my actual worth as a trainer. It's literally information like it's raining. And I've started to think about it like that. His behavior is like the weather. It has nothing to do, it's nothing to do with me. And that detachment really helped me. For me, it was creating these frameworks. That's what did it. And I think for lots of our clients, it's going through a framework and seeing other people go through it too. So for me, I have a big thing about community. I have a big thing about us doing this work together, because a lot of what needs to happen is deconditioning. A lot of the frustration that I felt was because I had been conditioned to expect perfection. I had been conditioned to expect unrealistic timelines from myself and from him. And I was really mean to myself and to him in the process sometimes when it wasn't happening fast enough. And I've learned myself that when I started to let go a little bit and relax into it and not push, not do that final push, just feel okay with having one look at the stranger and then leaving. And that was a great session. Good job, buddy. You nailed it. And celebrating those wins. Those were the things that really made a big difference for me. But I see this like epidemic of I'm not doing enough, I'm not good enough, amongst sensitive dog guardians around the world. You are all doing so much. And I think that sometimes that's not mentioned enough, like even just being here is pretty ridiculous and amazing. So I think celebrating yourself and taking care of yourselves first is like really, really important, because then you can regulate better for them. Yeah, really good.
Absolutely. Okay, Karishma, if somebody wanted to work with you or your team, how would they find you?
Yeah, you can find us at calmcanineacademy.com. That's our website. And you can find like the free webinar library there and some information about our services. You can also just email info@calmcanineacademy.com. So I'll just put that in the chat for you guys. So it's really easy. info@calmcanine.com. Academy. When I named my business, I didn't think about how hard it would be to spell. But info@calmcanineacademy.com. We're also on Instagram, so you can DM us there. If you're on Instagram, we do a lot of free stuff there. So those are 3 different ways that you can contact us, and you can tell us a little bit about your dog, about what you took from this, what it was that you found helpful, and we can help place you and figure out where you should be going. Oh, I'm glad that your folks are finding this helpful. Yay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Again, we're Every Dog Austin. We're a local nonprofit, and we really appreciate everybody who made a donation to be here today so that we can bring on more amazing speakers. If you're in a position to make a donation or buy a t-shirt, something like that, it goes a long way towards supporting more pup parents. I think some of our next upcoming webinars are about whether your dog might need behavior medication, and some of the treatment options. So that'll be really cool. There's one about feline communication, because cats have behavior too. So lots of cool webinars coming up. You can check them out, everydogaustin.org/webinars. And if you want to see all of our recordings, they're everydogaustin.org/videos. This should be up on YouTube, hopefully tomorrow, as long as YouTube cooperates, and I will send the link out to everybody. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'll catch you at one of our next ones. Thank you so much again, Karishma.
Thank you, everyone. Had a lovely time.
Bye.
Bye.